Hello, everybody. Welcome to our 8 p.m. Wednesday night talk. And we are so lucky to have a specialist in Tantra joining us. So we're going to be talking Tantra with Waratah Karleu. And I hope I pronounced that right. She is a specialist trained in sexology. She's a counsellor, a couples therapist, and also a wellness facilitator. She's qualified and has a postgraduate in sexual health, psychotherapy, couples therapy, and wellness. And she's also a yoga and meditation facilitator. So you have been a therapist for over 18 years and you've worked with both adults and teenagers. So tell us, what brought you to Tantra?
Okay, so the journey from Tantra is an interesting one, and it started when I was about 20 years old with a book which I've since come to see is many people's favourite book by an author called Tom Robbins, and it's called Jitterbug Perfume. And in that, it's this crazy story. It's this ribald tale that sort of spans 1,000 years, and within that was mentioned these sexual practices for longevity. And look, I could say that I've got all these planets in Scorpio and blah 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 blah, and that was sort of where I attached to. But it sort of certainly sparked an interest in me. And so from there, I studied my undergraduate was in Aboriginal studies, and I ended up at the end of that not really knowing how to be a whitey in this country at all, and so going and living on the banks of a river in northern New South Wales for a few years. And it was during that time that I really studied Taoism and got introduced to the Tantric techniques through lovers and so forth. And so from there, it's sort of been this life or 30 odd year journey with Tantra as a practice myself. But it really underpins yoga and mindfulness, and it's a much older practice than yoga itself. So then I sort of ventured on and I was studying counselling and so forth, and I was also running a fashion label which sort of grew out of some idea, and that sort of got to a point that it needed to fold, and it's like, so what's next? And it just came to me, sex therapy. And so at that point I went and studied the Masters in Sexual Health, but I also studied the Tantra Education. And doing that study was fantastic, but what it really did is affirm for me the knowledge that I had already accrued through experience and through doing my own research and studies within the area. So that's my journey.
What is journey into it? And a lot of people think of Tantra as some sort of sex act, but what exactly is Tantra? Okay. We're going to explain it to somebody that's never heard of the word.
Never heard of it before. Well, and I think that the reason why that people bring it into it just being sexual is that, the Kama Sutra and Tantra sort of end up, being sandwiched in together. The Kama Sutra being a whole series of different sexual positions and doesn't necessarily mean that it's got anything to do with Tantra. Tantra itself, the word Tantra means to expand awareness. And so for me, where I take, and you'll read lots of different people's takes on this, lots of different people talking about it, and they will come from different perspectives because it is a very personal journey with Tantra. So this expanding awareness, for me, I sort of feel that within our culture, we've sort of been given, it's an interesting that I grabbed, it's sort of a really small, limited view of what sex and sexuality is. And Tantra expands that awareness. So it becomes much more about connection with self and connection with others. And how to find that connection. How do we harness that connection within? And how do we, bring that into, relating and relationship with another?
And it's also like, probably our mothers, we weren't really just told to talk about sex and intimacy.
No, not at all. And I always find that so fascinating. It's this incredibly important part of life, and
Yeah.
yet we've been given absolutely no education around it, or ability, or even ways to communicate about it. And so it's almost like we're given this amazing little thing that we can partake in, but given no knowledge or training around it. And it's like we sent off in our little boats and, oh, good luck, hope that works for you, sort of thing. And for some people it does, and for some people it really doesn't. And
No.
I always find it really fascinating teaching the Tantra workshops, that people are like, oh, bam, that's the missing piece. That's what I didn't, why it didn't make sense, because this whole body of knowledge just really expands that picture, beautifully. Yeah.
And I think we've been inherited a lot of because in the past women weren't supposed to enjoy it. I don't know, in the last, it's just happened with the sexual revolution in the 60s, where it's become an act of pleasure and choice instead of just producing children.
Yeah. Or satisfying your husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like inherited, like it's not something we talk about, and it's not something that you want, it's pleasurable, it's a job that you have to do as part of your duty.
That's it. And, even further, and I think that's really interesting that you bring that up, because I think the stories that we were brought up with, and the stories that are formed around sex and sexuality, because we don't have a conversation, an empowering conversation in our society about it, these stories get carried through. And, quite often I'm with people and women, couples in therapy room, and start to unpack, well, what is that story? Where did that come from? And
Yeah.
the one that sex is painful, that, I overheard my auntie speaking at the age of 8 that, it's painful, but you just got to endure it. And so this is the story that, gets taken into the whole of sexual life and sexual relationships. Yeah.
So Tantra is a bit more than just physical activity. It's about connection with yourself and others. How do you think our existence at the moment with COVID, and especially us in Melbourne, we're in lockdown, how do you think this affects relationships? Because we're in a different situation where we cannot hide from our partners if we're in a relationship, and we can't hide from ourselves.
Absolutely. And we haven't necessarily been taught the skills on how to actually deeply connect with each other. Absolutely. And so I think, yeah, you're right. There is no escaping each other, but there's no escaping the elephants in the room that might be there
Yeah.
as well. We haven't got that capacity to run away and distract ourselves with work or this or that or the other. And so, yeah, really having to face and look at what is going on in the relationship. And I think a lot of those elephants are actually born out of disconnection. It can be so much easier to turn away from our problems than turn in towards them, because there's a great vulnerability in turning in towards them of, oh, what might I hear? What might I say? What might be spoken? What needs to be spoken? And what might the outcome of that be? And it's so often I'll have couples, that I'll facilitate these really vulnerable conversations with, and it is just so liberating for those voices to be heard by each other, and to be given the space, the safe space to be heard. And when things are shared in a vulnerable way, as opposed to a criticism or a defensiveness, that comes across, when we can actually really drop into the vulnerability of how it is that this is making us feel, and what it is that we truly desire to have for our relationship, it's much more able to be received.
Do you think, because of COVID, do you think a lot of people will probably, they'll either, if they've got a good relationship, come together, or if they have a bad relationship, they'll split apart almost because of the situation we're put under?
Yeah, I think that's totally possible. I also see a third possibility, and that is where things aren't really working, that people, because they can't run away, are forced to actually work through things.
Yes,
And
that's true.
yeah, and that there's that possibility for creating something new. out of the relationship, where we can look at each other and go, wow, you're the person that I'm doing this, lockdown with. You're the person that's making this easier. I could be completely on my own, as many people are.
Mm-hmm.
But you are here, and I think if we can start to look at our partners with a bit more generosity, and seeing them in their bettest or best selves, I've seen and witnessed a number of relationships turn around that I would have thought would have split by now. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast with Esther Perel. She wrote Mating in Captivity. And she goes, couples don't say please and thank you to each other after they've been together for a while.
Yeah. And look, consent is another thing that doesn't have happened. That there's just this expectation, and that happens on lots of levels. I'm not necessarily talking as sexual consent, but even the consent to have conversations. For instance, we've got something that we really want to talk about that's really important, and it's just like, we need to talk about this, and we need to talk about it now. And that's the energy to it. Whereas, partner B has got no idea what's going on, has had a really rough day, blah, 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 and all of a sudden they're corralled into having a conversation that they're not prepared for or not in the space for. And inevitably that conversation is not going to go well. So, this is one of the things of consent, asking for, are you in a space to have a conversation about this? And if not, when can we make the time for that?
Yes. And also another thing in the household, especially in lockdown, where it's assumed that, I know this is not general, but women, you're supposed to be doing this. It's assumed without the negotiation. Hang on, things have changed around us. We're in lockdown. There's different circumstances. There's kids homeschooling. We're both at home and renegotiating the relationship.
Yeah. Interesting. And the possibility to reinvent and renegotiate that relationship that possibly wasn't going to present itself, prior to lockdown and so forth, that we would just grind on through and possibly build resentments and so forth. But it's like, no, we living in this way, in these close confines together for goodness knows how long. Things need to be worked out in some way.
So tell us, what sort of tips could you give people? What about single people? Let's talk about single people and Tantra. How is single people and Tantra connected as well? Because most people think of Tantra as a couple, you go there.
Partner. Yeah, totally. And so that sort of heads me into another direction, and that is moving energy through the body. So, using breath, using intention, we can actually move energy through the body. So one of the tantric practices, like the understanding of within Tantra, and I sort of mash up Tantra and Taoism together in this one because it sort of makes more sense talking about it in the yin and yang as opposed to the feminine and masculine. Because I think that as soon as we start talking about feminine and masculine, and we've got men and women, and it's just like, no. They're two energies that both men and women inhabit. So when I talk about it as yin and yang, for women, the yang space is our hearts. Is our, it's where we're extroverted, where we're out there, where we create community, where we, chase love, where we, draw love hearts everywhere. We stitch them up, we paint them everywhere. Yeah, the heart space is yang. The yoni, which translates as sacred temple, is thanks, Albert. So the yoni is introverted. It's cooler, it's quieter, it takes more time to feel safe to open. So for men, it's like the polar battery. For men, it's the opposite. So for men, the penis, the lingam, is yang. It's extroverted, it's out there, wants to be seen, wants to be noticed, wants action in the world. And the heart space is yin, which is introverted, which is cooler, which is quieter, which takes more time to feel safe to open. Yeah. that in itself can be an aha moment for many women. You know, just the question I sort of ask is, you know, if you've ever had a man try to get into your yoni too quickly, it's the same energy as trying to get into a man's heart too quickly. You know, it gets that response back off.
Good point. Good point. Yay.
So, and you know, so this is also where we need to be really careful with communication and so forth, because the heart space is, it takes a lot to feel safe to open, and oh gosh, that's a whole other conversation about the whole enculturation of men and that shutdown of heart space. But so for single people, and particularly for single, I'm presuming that most of your audience are women. Is that right?
Yes, they're women. Yeah.
No, women. Okay, cool. So I'll talk to women then. Awesome. So with moving energy, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the heat. So wherever the heat is, so for women, that's the heart space, being the yang, the heat of the heart into the coolness of the yoni. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, it's not up to a partner or whatever to warm you up.
Can you just explain what the yoni is for people that don't know what that word
means? Yeah. So the yoni is, as I said, it translates as sacred temple, and it's the vulva.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So for women, that area is cool. It's quiet. It takes time to feel safe to open. Yeah. And so what we can do, rather than relying on a partner to do all that work and juice us up, is to move with the breath, with intention, the heat of the heart energy down into the coolness of the yoni. So we can use and I'll just take you through a practice to do that. So this practice, okay, I'll take you through the practice and I'll talk about it a little bit more. Yeah, okay. So what you can do is like a Kegels exercise. So you're squeezing just the PC muscle. So it's not the whole of the vagina and the anus and the perineum, but just the PC muscle, which is the muscle that you'd use if you'd stop yourself peeing midstream. So just squeezing that as you inhale and breathing up to your heart center. So just letting that breath come up. And then as you release that PC muscle, almost as though you were like a vacuum, sucking this heat energy of the heart down into the yoni. So as you inhale, squeezing, breathing up to your heart. And as you exhale, release, let it sink back down. And just do that a couple of times. Breathing in, squeezing, drawing up. And exhale, releasing. Okay. So that's a beautiful to do. Our sexual energy is not only to do with so the second energy center, it's to do with sex, it's to do with money, it's to do with power. Yeah. So the more we can get this energy moving through our whole bodies, the more empowered we can move in the world and that we can feel within ourselves. So just doing that breathing exercise and getting this harmonizing between the heart and the yoni is one way, but also you can use that while self-pleasuring. So, you know, really moving that energy through your body. So it's not just, you know, everything's happening in the genitals. It becomes a whole-bodied reality. Yeah. So you're breathing that energy up and letting it come back down, breathing it up. Yeah. So that can be a really.
What would you say to start with when you're first starting this?
Okay, so I mean the breathing work, you know, you could even just 3 times would be enough to, you know, do that focus. But you know, it depends on how much time you've got for this. You know, if you were doing it while self-pleasuring, well, you can do that for as long as you've got time for that as well. Yeah.
And it also helps build your pelvic floor muscles.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So with couples, tell us about how couples in relationships at the moment can build that connection again if they find they're a bit.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, as you say, comes about through communication, you know, because it keeps us in our heads. And so the more we get into it, the more we go round and round and round and round. And I think that, you know, one of the, you know, there's a couple of really beautiful practices. Long-term couples, especially if there is already some stuff between them, find this really difficult, and it's eye gazing. So yes. So it's a really beautiful practice, and I would totally recommend building it into your day, where you take a few minutes to really quieten the nervous system down. the reason why, like when we're spiked in the amygdala, so we're already in a stress situation with the lockdown, with the unknown, with where are things going. So already there's a slight amygdala response happening. So that's to do with our fight, our flight, our freeze, but also our fawn, where we people please. Yeah. So when we get into argument with our partner, that amygdala is fired even more. Now, once the amygdala is activated, the part of the brain that we need to come into connection is not able to be accessed. So one of the most important things to do prior to eye gazing is actually just sit with your eyes closed for a couple of minutes and let the body just relax, just quiet down. Breathing, whatever it is, just let the body be relaxed, the face be relaxed, because our face becomes almost like a mask that we wear. The expression is like the mask that we wear. And so when we can just quieten the face down and then open the eyes and find each other's left eye gaze. And the reason for the left eye,
yes, yeah.
the reason for the left eye, and try it out because it's really quite fascinating. Generally, the right eye is much more directive, much more personality, much more in the world, much more about business. Yeah, the left eye is much more receptive, and it's almost like soul to soul. There's no filter. That we're just there swimming in each other's gaze. Yeah. So if you can, and I would, as I said, highly recommend this as a daily practice, and it doesn't have to be for 10 minutes. Start even with, taking 4 or 5 breaths together, and then closing your eyes. Notice the intensity of that, of just connecting in this way with your partner. I mean, you probably did it when you first got together, but somewhere along the line, just like please and thank you and out the door.
Yes.
Yeah, the eye connection goes as well. So if we can find a space to do this, and this is one of the things that I very much talk about often with couples, is that space that we first created when we were dating, where the house was clean, where the candles were lit, where the phones were off the table, all of this thing, to actually create this place that the magic can exist within. And then somewhere along the line we stop doing those things. And then we go, well, where did the magic go? And it's just like we stop creating the space for it to exist within. So I think if we can, really be mindful of that, and where can we create a pocket? And it doesn't have to be, obviously in lockdown that's going to be more and more difficult, kids and so forth around. But we can still create just a couple of moments of connection. There we are, landed into each other. Yeah.
But
so
you can also,
go on. I was going to say
you go.
I was going to say that the eye gazing is one beautiful exercise, but another one is hugging, and just hugging. Quite often we'll hug and we're done, yeah. But just to hold each other and let the body relax, and take another breath and let it relax again. And you'll notice, you think you're relaxed, and then there's another layer and another layer and another layer, and just allowing your bodies to just melt into each other and be there. That's your oxytocin production. That's your connection. Yeah. So hugging for 3 minutes or so, but consciously relaxing your body with each out breath is another really beautiful practice.
And you can also do this with your children. If you've connected with them, because we don't have that time to gaze at our children or just be there and breathe together.
Totally, and this is one of the beautiful things about lockdown is that our children are witnessing everything, and so we can just, as we weren't privy to conversations around intimacy and so forth, growing up, and that's why we're still having to learn it. I think vicariously our children can begin to learn it. One of the most beautiful stories, and I tell this quite regularly because it was just so gorgeous. I saw this couple, and I only saw them a couple of times, and they got what they needed to get. But the third time they came along, and they said, we didn't really need to come back to see you, but our 12-year-old son made us come back because he wanted to share his thanks, his gratitude for what you've done for us, because he's noticed a huge difference. And I think, wow, and all they were doing was sitting on the couch at the end of the day and eye gazing, and just the difference that made in the whole house and the interactions.
And so we might open up for questions. If anybody's got some questions, please write them down and we'll pop up and answer as many as we can. Even eye gazing, even if you're in a marriage and you've got kids, there's nothing wrong with doing it on the dining table with your kids watching.
Absolutely. I think, and this is what I mean. Like, I think it's a really beautiful thing for the kids to witness that intimacy, because they get to learn that. Oh, wow, and the energy that it creates as well. Because, and I would also recommend it even if you've got a difficult or a conversation to have with each other. Spend a couple of minutes quietening your bodies down, eye gazing, and I swear that conversation will be so different. The energy to that conversation will be so different.
I think that's a great tip. Any more tips? Can you share with us a few more tips? So we've got eyes gazing, breathing. Like, so when we breathe, I feel that breath is the connection between our central nervous system where we connect.
Absolutely.
So breathing is a huge, you can feel the rhythm of breath. So two things. What, anything else you can think of that we can do? Because these are quite simple things that we can add into our lives. Very easy.
Look, I would suggest finding 3 things at the end of the day. Find 3 things that your partner's done that you can be grateful for, and sharing them with your partner.
Yes.
Yeah.
We stop connecting and sharing the good things. We just pick the bad things and say we'll mention this first.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you're always telling me I'm doing it wrong and la 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 la. Okay, take the time to tell them that they're doing it right, and allow them that space as well to tell you. And again, these practices, they're simple to do. They are so simple to do, and they can just make such a difference.
And it could just be 5 minutes, breathing together, gazing, and just saying 3 things that are nice. And if you can't invest 5 minutes in your relationship, then
it could be 5 minutes every day, very, very well spent. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a question here. What is the best way to overcome intimacy, trust issues with men? In 30 seconds. All right. Look, that's a huge question, because I think everybody, we all come with our trust issues, so to speak. We've all had things have happened in the past. We haven't necessarily had our boundaries respected, whether that goes right back to childhood or into our adult years and so forth. So I think trust is look, check out Brené Brown's Anatomy of Trust video, because she speaks to it beautifully. Because what she does is she breaks down trust, because we talk about trust and it's just like, well, what does that even mean? And what she does in this video is she breaks it down into an acronym of BRAVING, and that there's these 6 different components to trust, and this is what we need to feel trust. And so if any one of those is not happening, it will break our trust. And the other thing that she spoke of in that video was that trust is like a marble jar, and that marbles are either getting put into that jar or they're getting taken out of that jar. Yeah, and it's whether people are doing these 6 things in this BRAVING acronym that will determine whether or not they're putting them in or taking them out. The other reason why I really love that acronym is because it, as I said, it breaks down what trust is into these more operatable for components. So we can say, okay, rather than I don't trust you, it's just like, when you do this, any one of those 6, that leads me to lose my trust in you. And it's like that bubbles out of my jar, sort of thing. So yeah, I totally recommend checking out Brené Brown's Anatomy of Trust video. Excellent. Anybody got any more questions while we're here? Please ask away. So 3 things to take away. Eye gazing from the left eye to the left eye.
To the left eye, left eye to left eye. Yeah.
Breathing together deeply with each other or with yourself. And think of compliments, 3 things that your partner's done that's made you happy.
Or even 3 things about your partner that make you happy.
Yes. So
3 things to be happy about.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. We've got one. this was so interesting. That's when men go into their man cave space, when women are trying to get into their heart too quickly.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Yeah, I think again there's many components to why men go into their man cave. Partly that they have. Oh, and this is actually something, and this comes from Esther Perel as well. You know, one of the things that she says is that for women, we've spent the last 50 years getting to where we are. You know, we've been doing a lot of personal growth work. We've been going to therapy. We've been, you know, going on retreats and workshops and so forth. For a lot of men, they're just starting on that journey now. And what that's going to require of us as women is compassion. Like, rather than going, why aren't you with us? Why are you here now? They're just not. Our culture has not allowed them to be in many ways. And so that journey is really starting for a lot of men now. And no, they don't have the skills of communication that we're being brought up and enculturated with. But I think that there's a lot of men who are learning, and I think the best thing that we can show them is compassion along that journey. Yeah.
Excellent. Any more questions before we end tonight's conversation? Thank you so much. That was so interesting, how we can just use a small few techniques to really help us connect deeper, not only just with our partners, but ourselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely. And build that trust with our partners and ourselves, because when we have trust ourselves, we're able to know that we're going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you so much, and thank you everybody for listening to the conversation. Tell me where people can find out more about what you're doing at the moment with your work. Can we tag a website and stuff?
Yeah, I can tag a website. I've also got a number of online workshops coming up over the next month or so. So I've got individual workshops for women, and I've also got couples workshops. That will be coming up over the next 6 weeks or so.
Excellent.
So I can put a link to those, and also a link to my website. If anybody needed some support, available online for consultations also. Yeah.
So please put your comments there. We'll be there afterwards to answer some of your comments, either today, later on, or tomorrow morning, or whatever. But please, thank you for watching. If you've got any comments, let us know, and we will send you some details of where we can find you to learn more about Tantra. So we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. We appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.